Good evening and welcome to another edition of Making the Case. I am very pleased to be joining you on this Wednesday evening. Thank you for welcoming me into your homes. As is customary, I would ask that those of you who are joining me on Facebook Live to please share this live so that we can reach as many people as possible. I am also joining those who are watching on MTV channel 65, and those of you who are listening to me on Freedom Radio. I appreciate you joining me this evening. I know that I'm competing for airtime this evening because the cricket is on, but I appreciate those of you who are joining me live. And for those who are at the cricket, I am asking for you to share this live so they can watch it at some other time that is convenient to them. Last week, I was made aware after I finished the recording that we had some video and audio issues. So permit me please to apologize for the poor quality of the production last week. But we have worked very hard from last week to now to improve our production. So the video and audio quality should be much better this week. So I hope that you can hear me and see me loud and clear. Now, as usual, we have a packed program this evening, and not only packed, but very important. We are discussing very important issues tonight. You know, on this program, it is very important for us here at the team at Making the Case that when we speak to you, that we are discussing issues in a very factual way, that we do not come on air to try to mislead the public or to mislead anyone on very important national issues. So I want to take you through a few important issues this evening. So the People's Progressive Party, Civic, since our assumption of office in 2020, we have outlined, even before the elections, a plan and a vision for our country. And that is what the people of Guyana elected us on. We have been trying to build a country that is inclusive and democratic in every way possible. We have been trying to provide equal opportunities for all Guyanese, irrespective of their race, religion, and irrespective of where they live. We have been making investments in education and healthcare so that people can elevate themselves, they can upskill themselves, and that the healthcare that is provided is of a world-class quality. We have been expanding the housing program, the water sector program, so that people have access to affordable housing and clean water. And we have been investing in the scholarship program so people can study, earn a tertiary degree, and have a job that can earn them a livable wage. The most important thing the People's Progressive Party Civic has been doing as well is to ensure that people have the freedom of choice on which government they would want to rule this country. And so our adherence to democratic principles is extremely important. The Vice President made a statement recently that were it not for the PPP, the democracy would not have prevailed in Guyana. And he is absolutely right, because I watched him toil day and night when he was leader of the opposition, doing nothing else but fighting for this country, fighting for the soul of this country and for democracy to prevail. And yes, many, many others contributed to that effort. And we could not have done it without the contribution of countless and nameless men and women who gave service during that time. And we are eternally grateful to them as well. But the People's Progressive Party Civic carried that struggle. And that struggle continues even today. And so I said a few moments ago, I spoke about our program here in government, in education, in healthcare, in housing, providing opportunities. That's what we are focused on. The progress and development of our country and our people. The APNU AFC, on the other hand, with no track record of achievement to speak of, have to rely every day on a campaign of misleading the public and making an industry of it. The industry of misleading the public on very important national issues. And that is why programs like these are very, very important. Because here on this program, when I come to you every week, we discuss issues in a factual way. I ensure that research is done, and I can point you in the direction of where I get my information. So I'm not only relying on you seeing what is taking place in our country, and a lot of it is very visible, especially as we change the infrastructural landscape of our country. It's very visible. But it's important for you to know what the opinion of Guyana is globally. And that will help you to decide if what is happening in our country is good for Guyana or not. So that is the direction that we will go in this evening. So every day we have to fight this campaign of misinformation and a daily dose of lies that is fed to this country by the APNU AFC. Now, Mr. Norton, the leader of the opposition, has recently started talking about a pathway to prosperity, and I dealt with this last week on the program, which is plagiarism at its best. Because our manifesto, the People's Progressive Party Civic Manifesto, speaks about a pathway to prosperity, the path to prosperity. Norton changes up one word and is claiming the pathway to prosperity and speaking about a people-centered government. There has never been a more people-centered government in the history of Guyana other than the People's Progressive Party Civic. And this is evident in our many, many social policies and programs that has always been part of our administration. From 1992 to 2015, and then from 2020 to now. This has always been part and parcel of our policies and our programs in government. And you know what they are. The pension, the subsidy to pensioners, the grant to the school children, and many, many more. Reduction of taxation, reducing water tariff. All of these are social programs that have always formed part of our administration and of successive People's Progressive Party Civic governments. So those are the real people-centered issues and policies of any government. And we know what happened to those policies in 2015 when the APNU AFC took office. We know that they took away the grant for the school children. We know that they removed the subsidy for water and electricity from our pensioners, and the whole host of it. We know that they increased water tariffs, they more than doubled water tariffs. They increased university fees by 35%, the tuition at the University of Guyana, and many, many more policies that they removed and implemented. We know the burden of taxation that we faced during that 5-year period. Over 200 new taxes on basic food items. We know that they taxed everything. And so an increase in fees, GRA fees and so on, which made everyday life for people very, very difficult. And so when people were wondering, why isn't my salary enough for me to live on anymore? Why am I finding it so hard? It's because of the heavy-handed taxation system that we faced during that 5-year period that the APNU AFC was in government. And you don't have to spend a long time with Mr. Norton to come to the realization that the man lacks substance. And so Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, in his mere 2-minute conversation with Mr. Norton when he was here in Guyana, when he finished that meeting, said that there is need for constructive opposition in Guyana. And that is because Secretary Blinken already deduced in his short conversation with Mr. Norton, he already deduced that the leader of the opposition has nothing of substance to offer the people of Guyana, and nothing to offer his own constituency as well, because they do have a constituency. People voted for them at the last election, and people need representation. And for any democracy to thrive, you need a viable opposition, and you need to see the opposition working for you and holding the government accountable. We are in a position where we have to hold ourselves accountable, and instead of doing it in a constructive manner and speaking more about our policies and programs, we have to fight every day misinformation and lies emanating from the opposition. And this is because they have no track record of which to speak. They have no record of achievements that they can relate to, or that they can remind the public of what they did. They cannot remind the public of what they did because those are simply bad memories. And that will be very emotive for the people of our country. So they have to instead run a campaign of misinformation every single day, every program, every time the AFC or the APNU goes live or goes on television, or they hold a press conference. It is a daily dose, a diatribe of lies and misinformation. And so we have to invest a lot of time fighting off those lies. Because if people hear them repeatedly, even if they sound ridiculous when you first hear it, and you may think to yourselves, there is no way that this can be true. Human behavior is such that if they hear something over and over again, being repeated and being written in the newspapers, they may fall prey to it, and they may eventually believe that what they are hearing is true, or that it must be true. So we have to fight this every single day, and that is why we cannot let up on this struggle for democracy and the struggle to ensure that the correct and credible information is disseminated to all the people of Guyana. And Norton has made several outlandish lies already, which does not augur well for his credibility. And so when someone can repeat lies that can be easily refuted or disproved, one has to wonder then, how can I trust this individual? So of most recent, we're not even going to go back into ancient history. Of most recent, prior to the holding of the local government elections, Mr. Norton claimed that the APNU was competing in virtually all of the constituencies in our country. And we know that that was false. We know that the APNU competed in less than 50% of the constituencies nationally. And that was easily refutable. So that's the first big lie that he told. Secondly, he claimed that he won those local government elections. And we know that that is false as well, that the PPPC won 66 of the 80 local authority areas in the elections. It was a whitewash because in many of the constituencies, they did not even compete. The APNU did not even compete. So the People's Progressive Party Civic won those constituencies even before the elections were held because it was a no competition in those areas. But he claims that the APNU won the elections and went on to have victory rallies in several areas in Georgetown and across the country. And then he took it a step further. He went overseas and he spent several weeks overseas doing the same thing, attending receptions and saying to Guyanese overseas that the APNU won the local government elections. So when you can see an individual willing to lie in such a brazen manner, and they keep repeating something like that, one has to wonder, who is this person? And if he can do this in the face of evidence to the contrary, then there is no way that you can trust that person. And there is no way that you can trust anything that that person says. So therefore, when Mr. Norton will speak about his plans for Guyana, if the APNU wins the next election, how therefore can you trust what he is saying and what he will do should, God forbid, should they win the next general elections? This person has no credibility. Mr. Norton or none of the opposition MPs or members of that party do not have any credibility. So even if they are speaking about plans for the future, there is no way that you can trust that plan, because this is a person who is prone to lying in the face of evidence and in the face of truth. So we have to be very, very careful when, if the only place you're getting your news or information from is the APNU party page, or if you're only listening to Mr. Norton, because he's taking you down a rabbit hole. The third thing is that he made some wild claims overseas about there being 25% corruption in all government spending, amounting to almost $200 billion. Now, this struck me because they have done this before. This is not new. This is directly out of the PNC playbook. So they've done this before, and they said that that using this money, if they recover this amount, they will be able to deliver on their social programs. So this is a this is a very clever setup, and I'll go back to where they did. So in their manifesto 2015, the APNU AFC manifesto 2015, there was a section in here that when he said that, it immediately drew my mind to, here it is, a section in their 2015 manifesto under the heading Reaping the Democratic Dividend. And under this heading, they made several suggestions on how they will reap the democratic dividend, to make the point that should they recover these monies that were being spent through corrupt means, that they would fund social programs. So here he's saying $200 billion can be recovered. Under the heading Reaping the Democratic Dividend, point number 4, they say this: reducing procurement fraud. And they said that this will be about 28 to 35% of total procurement spending, which amounts to $140 billion. So in 2015, they said that if they remove corruption, and that if there is procurement fraud, first of all, of 28 to 35%, and that there will be such a transparent and accountable government that they would be able to recover $140 billion. That's what they said in 2015. Now we know what happened after the 2015 period. They found no such procurement or corruption, procurement fraud or corruption on any scale that anyone was charged or convicted, and so there was no recovery of $140 billion that they could have used to fund any program under their administration. They ran a campaign in 2015 about the PPP being the most corrupt government and all of these. We remember, it's not so long ago. And they tried to paint the People's Progressive Party Civic as a very corrupt government. And so they put a number to it. So now he has embellished this lie and is saying that they can recover $200 billion. So he has increased the amount. They'll be able to recover $200 billion. And then he does something very interesting. He links it to the social programs that they will be able to fund should they recover this money. So it therefore means that if they are wrong and they do not recover this $200 billion, what will be the fate of the social programs that they are promising the citizens of our country? That's why I said to you, this is a setup. So Aubrey Norton will have an excuse when he is unable to deliver on the social programs that he is promising his constituencies and by extension the people of our country. So we have to not have short memories in this country, and sometimes we have short memories. So when we're hearing these things, it's as though we're hearing it for the first time. But if you're paying attention to the tactics and the playbook of the opposition, you can easily reference where they have said or done things in a similar way and where it didn't work out. And so what it is a big bluff and a big lie to once again mislead the people of our country. So when you want to know, as I said before, if you read the Kaichur News, the Stabroek News, and you hear the commentary of many of the social activists who are suddenly very environmentally conscious and who have declared themselves experts in the field of oil and gas and climate resilience and so on. If you listen to them, you will think that there is doom and gloom in Guyana. Every day you pick up the newspapers and you read the Starbrook News or the Kaichor News, you would think that nothing good is happening in Guyana. But we know that those newspapers are partisan, and some writers, whether they are the editorials, the editor, or people who send letters in those newspapers, we know that they have a political agenda. So how therefore can you trust what you are reading in the newspapers or hearing on Facebook? So the best thing to do would be to listen to what the world is saying about Guyana. Because the global experts, the international financial institutions, for example, and other leaders of major developed countries internationally, they do not have a political agenda in Guyana. They will be able to deliver a fair judgment of the progress and development in Guyana. And so recently we saw a report from the IDB, and these reports, so the IDB, that's the Inter-American Development Bank, has vindicated the stewardship of the PPP over the last 3 years. So the IDB report on the economy, and this was published only last month, so August of this year, said that Guyana's high rate, and I'm quoting from the report, that Guyana's high rate economic growth continues steadily, driven by a growing oil production sector. Against this backdrop, the report says, unemployment rates have declined, inflation rates have moderated, and lending to the private sector grew. It goes on. Guyana's macroeconomic context continues to be one of significant growth. The macroeconomic context is the overall fiscal policy of the country. And so it says that our macroeconomic context continues to be one of significant growth. The report goes on. Considering the current challenging global context, Guyana remains in a unique position, benefiting from its newfound sources of revenue, as well as resources related to environmental sustainability, such as the sale of carbon credits. This places Guyana in an excellent position to continue pursuing its developmental objectives. These few lines from the report is a clear vindication and verification that what the People's Progressive Party Civic is doing in the sense of its fiscal policies, its economic policies, and its social programs, that all of it places Guyana in the right position to pursue further developmental goals. So it's not saying that Guyana is spending too much, that Guyana is contributing to inflation, and it is recognizing that the global economy is facing severe challenges. Many countries are facing very, very high inflation rates. Countries are at war. There are a lot of shortages of goods and services in many countries. And in spite of all of this, interest rates are on the increase in many of the developed countries, including Europe, United States, Canada, etc. But here in Guyana, you know that interest rates have been declining since we've taken office. And this is as a direct result of the housing program and as a direct result of the policy of the government as it relates to lending. So the housing program has made a significant contribution to the lowering of interest rates on mortgages, for example. You know that the construction sector has grown about 26% from 2022 to 2023. And this also is a significant contributor to job creation and to stimulating spending in the economy. So that is, and the IDB studies the macroeconomic policy of governments globally, so not just in Guyana, and they study the indicators of development. And they are clearly saying to us in this report that Guyana is on the right track and that Guyana will see development if the government of Guyana, meaning the People's Progressive Party civic government, continues to govern in the way that it is governing presently. So that is one source that you can turn to that is analyzing what is taking place in Guyana, that is analyzing our progress, and is saying that Guyana is moving in the right direction. And this is largely because the government has the right policies and programs in place at this specific time. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, was also here recently, and they had a mission here. And on the conclusion of their mission, they published their report. This report was only published 2 days ago, Monday of this week, September 11th. And it said that Guyana's economy is expected to expand this year by 38%. So our economy will grow by 38% by their estimates. That's the IMF estimates. And I would like to also quote for you from that report, because it's a very, very good report. It's not a very long report, so I encourage people, if you're interested in knowing or in reading an objective analysis of the progress in our country, read this report, the IMF report. But I will pull out for you the highlights of the report. So it says this: the Guyanese economy continues to grow very rapidly, supported by the government's modernization plans, including the unparalleled oil sector expansion. Following record real GDP growth in 2022, 62.3%, the highest in the world, real GDP is expected to continue to grow extremely fast in 2023. Oil production is ramping up with the coming on stream of a third oil field and growth in the non-oil sector. And this part is important too. It acknowledges that growth in the non-oil sector is supported by the implementation of a fast-paced public investment program focused on providing transportation, housing, and flood management infrastructure, and raising human capital. Spillovers from oil and construction are supporting growth in the services and supplies sectors, while agriculture, mining, and quarrying are also performing well. Now, this, in my opinion, if you read this, there is really nothing else you need to know, or no other opinion you need to have on the government's policies and the direction that our country is heading in. Because the IMF, in this one paragraph alone, has summarized our position globally. So it not only speaks about growth in the oil sector, but it also highlights the growth in the non-oil sectors and how the public investment program, and that is through our national budgets annually. That is the public investment program. And they highlight in this report how through that program, the public investment program, we are expanding all of these other industries outside of the oil and gas sector. So it speaks about the housing program, it speaks about our climate credentials, it speaks about mining, agriculture, and so on. And this, like I said, this is an objective report. So this is not the Kaichur News or the APNU AFC page or the leader of the opposition press conference that if you listen to it, you're wondering if you're living in a different country from what is being described when you hear the members of the opposition speak. So a few other things from the report. It says the outlook for medium-term growth is better than ever before. It mentions the policy mix. The fiscal and monetary policy mix is appropriate at this time. The report says that clearly. So when you hear Amanza Desir or this guy, the economic wizard from the opposition, what's his name? Elson Lowe. Yes. When you hear them speak about the public investment program and how we're investing in the wrong things and we're spending too much and we're going back for too much supplementaries and all of that, the IMF says clearly that the fiscal and monetary policy mix is appropriate at this time. If the country is getting increased resources from the oil and gas sector and from other sectors, and people still need clean water, what should we do? Not spend the money? Not spend the money to build roads, open up new lands, provide housing for people, ensure that they have access to clean water? We know that every day we have challenges with keeping the lights on. That is evident. We're not hiding that. That is evident that we have problems at the Guyana Power and Light, keeping the lights on. What should we do? Put the money in a bank account and not invest it in the 300 megawatt plant to bring down electricity by 50%? What should we do? Every day people complain about the public hospital, the GPHC. They want better services. They want specialized services. We need more drugs in the system. We need better health care services. What should we do? Not spend the money on building 12 new hospitals and on ensuring that not only the infrastructure is built out, but that people have access to quality healthcare services. That's why we have partnered with Mount Sinai, so that we are tackling the healthcare sector from both angles. From the one angle where we have to improve infrastructure and we have to physically build 12 new hospitals, some including specialty hospitals like the maternal and children hospital that is being constructed, but also on the delivery of service, so that when you go to the hospital, you feel that you are being taken care of, that you are in good hands, and you feel a sense of security that the healthcare you are being provided with is of a standard worthy of a developed country. So that's what we have to spend the money on. And that is precisely where we are spending the money. We're spending money on training, vocational training, training in the hospitality sector. We're spending money on getting scholarships for our people so that they can improve their own competency. And then the sky is the limit as to where they would want to work and earn more money, get promoted at their workplace or change jobs, so that people have choices, so that people have opportunities to develop themselves. Not a handout program that the Kaichur News wants or the APNU wants, a handout program. That is not sustainable. And we have said that before. And people need to understand what that means. It is unsustainable. The oil and gas sector will not last forever. There is a short window in which we have to make the most use of our resources before the global energy transition. And then fossil fuels will become a thing of the past. So we have a very short window in which to develop our country and improve the lives of our people. And the right plan at this point in time is very, very important. And here the IMF is saying that the government of the day, the People's Progressive Party civic government, has the right plan and at the right time. It goes on. The authorities' commitment to fiscal discipline is welcome and allows for a balanced growth path. So the IMF is acknowledging that even though we have increased spending in the public sector through the public sector investment program, there is still some fiscal discipline being exercised by our government. And we are accustomed to doing this. We have seen the People's Progressive Party civic manage this country in the 90s when we had no money, when this was a bankrupt country, when we were declared by the same IMF that I'm reading from now, when we were declared uncreditworthy. So, and here we have in 2023, the IMF pronouncing that the fiscal discipline we are exhibiting at this time, in other words, not sharing out the money in an unsustainable way, that this allows for a balanced growth path. And let me just go just one more point on governance and accountability. It says that the staff, the IMF, commend the authorities' progress, the authorities meaning the authorities in Guyana, commend the authorities' progress in strengthening AML-CFT governance, anti-corruption frameworks, and support further advances in their effective implementation. Several pillars of the anti-corruption framework have been further strengthened, including the Integrity and Public Procurement Commissions and the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board. Now, if this is not a vindication of the People's Progressive Party civic, then I don't know what is. Somebody needs to get a highlighter and give this to Mr. Norton, because he's the one overseas talking about 25% corruption in the public sector program. And here we have the IMF saying that the anti-corruption framework has been strengthened, including the Integrity and Public Procurement Commissions. And we know that the members of the People's Progressive Party civic side of the government has always made declarations to the Integrity Commission, and it was the APNU members of Parliament who during their tenure in office for 3 years did not make declarations to the Integrity Commission. As a matter of fact, disbanded the Integrity Commission. It says that the staff commends the authorities' progress to strengthen the management of oil wealth and its fiscal transparency. The NRF Act, amended in 2021, enhanced transparency and accountability of the use of oil revenues. Can you imagine? IMF is saying this. Amended NRF Act. Amended one, meaning the one that we passed in government. Enhanced transparency and accountability of the use of oil revenues. But if you read the Kaichor News every day, front page and all the pages, they criticize the government that there is corruption in the system, that this is a bad deal that the country got. We know that it's a bad deal that the country got. We didn't sign the 2016 agreement, But we have made amendments to the local content. We've passed the local content legislation. We've passed the NRF Act so that we can protect Guyana and that we can provide opportunities to the people of our country and to the private sector of our country that is not there in that 2016 agreement. And this is a vindication of that. In 2022, the governance of the NRF was strengthened. This is what the report is saying. With the appointment of 3 critical bodies, the NRF Board of Directors, the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, and the Investment Committee. The year 2022 was the year when oil revenues were transferred from the NRF to the budget. The use of the funds is reported in the budget documents, and all receipts are published. The process continued with the 2023 budget. But if you read some of these newspapers and listen to the so-called experts in the oil and gas sector, on the economy, on climate, and the environment, you will think that the PPP is just sitting idly by and that we're sitting on our hands and we are doing nothing to ensure that we maximize the opportunities that are provided to our people through the oil and gas sector. So this report, again published by the IMF, is a clear vindication and an affirmation that our policies and our macroeconomic plan for our country is the right one, and that Guyana is moving in the right direction. Further, there was another article published recently, only in July of this year, on the oil and gas sector, and it speaks about how Guyana is a leader, a global leader in the oil and gas sector. So you can check this article out for yourself. I encourage you to read it. It was published by Energy Capital Power. The title of the article is From Discovery to First Production: What Africa's Hottest Frontier Oil Play in Namibia Can Learn from Guyana. That's the title of the article. And it commends the way that the Guyana government has handled the oil and gas sector from first discovery and first production to where we are now. And so the author says this: I have written extensively this year about how delayed African oil and gas projects in Africa can rob countries of opportunities. Guyana has made a point of avoiding such pitfalls. Less than 5 years after ExxonMobil's initial Stabroek Block discovery with partners Hess and CNOOC in 2015, their Liza Phase 1 project began producing oil. That's considered downright speedy in the oil and gas industry. So this is what the author is saying about how we have been handling our oil and gas sector. And when people talk about how we are in a rush to get all of the oil out of the ground, these people, experts in the oil and gas sector, are saying that is the right approach at this time. Even the president and CEO of the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago, a man by the name of Dax Driver, recently praised Guyana for developing its oil and gas resources at a record pace. He says this: for countries like Guyana and Suriname, with these massive oil resources in place, and some of them transitioning into reserves, and some being produced, priority has to be to fast-track development of these resources. End of quote. This is something which Guyana has done extremely well since its first discovery. It is a world leader in fast-tracking its discoveries. Guyana's government, it says, at the same time has been updating the country's oil and gas regulations to help ensure ongoing investment and benefits for the Guyanese people. In addition, the government passed strong local content legislation in 2021. The resulting policy will include an effective framework of international oil companies to communicate their needs to local businesses. This is another lesson that Namibia, which is a country in Africa, and other African countries in general can learn from Guyana. That is what the article says. Perhaps one of the best examples that Guyana is setting is that it approaches its oil and gas industry with a sense of urgency. Urgency to get as much value as possible from its petroleum resources. Urgency to get policies right so the country can continue attracting investments and reaping the benefits they offer. And all of this has to happen before the global energy transition. This is, it reads like poetry. I love it. But more importantly, it is a clear affirmation that the way that our government has been approaching the oil and gas sector, the way that we have been approaching the oil and gas sector, meaning the policies, fiscal policies, economic policies that we have been implementing to reap the benefits of our oil and gas resources are the correct policies. And this, and the urgency with which we are treating it, is not one to be condemned, but it is being commended. The urgency, the fast pace at which we are moving is being commended by oil and gas experts internationally. And they're saying to other countries that you need to look to Guyana as a leader and as an example in which to follow. So don't be carried away or be misled by the APNU and the AFC during their press conferences and their lives and statements and so on. And there are several programs that come out from that section of our society. Here we have international leaders in oil and gas pronouncing on Guyana's position globally as a leader in the oil and gas sector, that we have the right monetary policies and fiscal policies at this time, that it will contribute to our growth and development, that it is a balanced growth, and many more glowing reviews of the position that Guyana is in now. And it is placed in this position because of the leadership of President Ali, Vice President Jagdeo, and the entire People's Progressive Party civic government. So every day, I've been told that I have 5 minutes already, even though I wanted to talk a little bit about sugar tonight. I even had a video lined up for you, but I don't think I'll be able to do that. I should probably just stick with the reviews that I've been covering and the commendations that Guyana has been receiving from global leaders and the reports that have been published recently on how well Guyana is doing economically. So the people of our country need to know that, because, like I said, a lot of times it takes effort for us to go to find these articles. You have to invest time to read a lot of these reports, because the newspapers will not cover it for you like that. They have a partisan agenda. Many of them have their own political agenda, and they dislike the government of the day. So you are being fed a diatribe of lies and misleading information. So people have to make a conscious effort to watch programs like these, to go out there and to find out for themselves, do their own research, to find out for yourself what is the world saying about Guyana's position now. And so when you read that, you know that that is a source you can trust. You can't trust the APNU Facebook page. You can't trust the In the Ring and the FYI and all this nonsense that comes from the opposition. You have to trust credible sources, international organizations and global leaders who are making pronouncements on Guyana's progress and development. I have come down to program time, and I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening, even as I compete with the cricket at the National Stadium. So please, before I forget, I encourage you again to please share this program so that people can watch at their own leisure at another time, and so that we can reach as many people as possible. Please have a safe rest of the evening. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you same time, same place next week. God bless.